Hello guys, welcome to another video. My name is Scripts and today we're gonna continue with our part 3 of this advanced recoil series, okay? So this is where we stopped on the last episode. Now I'm gonna real quick review some of the things we did last episode, okay? So this is gonna be a quick review, okay? Make sure that if you are watching this series for the first time, make sure that you go back and watch my first episode and then my second episode so that you can understand everything that we're doing right now. Now, if you're lazy or you just don't feel like going back, then you can easily copy my code and yeah. So let's actually begin from the top real quick. So we have our normal imports over here, okay? We didn't do any change here at all. Yeah. And then over here we have our imports. We have keyboard and import of mouse. We're currently using mouse, okay? Later on, we are going to use Pi inputs and Win32 API to move the mouse. And then we're also gonna use Pi AutoGui, okay? We created these global variables, okay? Recoilable and usual font. We already had our interface, everything set up. We created our geometry. We set our geometry, okay? And then we created this main body over here in which we have our toggle, okay? And we have our checkbox, okay? And then we have this little function over here that basically every single time you check the checkbox, okay, it's gonna call this function and then it's gonna change recoilable. So if the checkbox is checked, then recoil is on. If the checkbox is not checked, then recoil is off. Okay? And by recoil, I'm talking about recoil compensation. Okay? And then we have this little function over here, which is our recoil loop. And basically, the responsibility of the recoil loop is literally to do that. It's going to take care of the whole recoil portion. It's going to, if the recoil is on, right, recoil bool is on, right, which is a variable. Let me just show you guys that variable over here. It's a variable. If that variable is on, then it's gonna start moving our mouse. Now, in this specific video, it's gonna be a little long again, so make sure you have some water next to you or whatever, okay? And make sure you have your if you're gonna follow along, make sure that you're pausing the video constantly. All right. In this specific video, we're gonna talk more about layout real quick. So let me actually execute the program. All right. So this is what we have right now. Okay. So currently we have this application over here. Okay. It's 500 by 500. Okay. And it has toggles over here on the top. Okay. And it has this weird checkbox. Now, as you guys can see, the checkbox is moving my mouse. So I checked it and it's already moving my mouse. It's moving my mouse because of this loop over here. So let me just actually uncheck it. Let me see if I can click on it. If I cannot click on it, then I can just press Q. Okay. So let me just press Q. If you press Q, it's gonna break. Remember that. So you always wanna have a way out. One thing that you guys can notice is that I cannot turn it on again. So after I break the loop, this function actually ends, right? Because there's nothing else after the function, there's nothing else after the loop. So the function actually just ends. So that's one thing that we need to fix this episode. Something else is that, if someone else is gonna use your application, right, they're gonna be very confused because they don't know what this checkbox is actually doing. There's nothing that tells me what this checkbox does. It may delete my system32, right? You don't know, right? So it's kind of important for us to actually put a label next to this checkbox so that somebody knows, that people can understand the purpose of this checkbox. So let's do that right now. So let's first put a label right here before this checkbox. So let me go over here to the main body, right? That's where everything is. And I'm gonna create a new label and I'm gonna call it recoil label equals to ttk label self text recoil toggle. You can call this whatever you want. Font, I'm gonna use my variable font and the size is gonna be 14. By variable font, I'm talking about my variable that I created over here. Okay, this variable, and this is the font that I'm gonna be utilizing. The reason why I use this variable is so this way, if I ever want to change the font later on, I can very easily do it by simply just typing over here, like Helvetica, and that's going to change the font for every single one of my labels. Okay, so that's just a quick way of doing it. The reason why I don't have the reason why I don't use a the reason why I don't specify a size over here too, like for example, usual size, is because not everything is the same size. For example, these toggles over here has a size of 16, and I want this recoil toggle to have the size of 14. Okay, so not everything is gonna have the same size. You could specify something like header size equals to 16, and then paragraph size equals to 14. The reason why everything is caps here is just for it's just so that people don't change it. You know, there's nothing actually prohibiting you from changing this, but it's just so that if somebody else is reading my code, they're gonna know that, you know, you shouldn't change that. That's not something that's gonna change. It's a global variable that won't change. Anyways, so yeah, so you guys can do that. I'm not gonna do that. All right. So, and if you do that, by the way, let me just show you guys real quick. If you do utilize variables for your font size, then you can just replace it, header size, for example, here, and then paragraph size, just like that. And it's gonna work. Okay. I'm actually gonna execute it so you guys can see. Now, before I execute it, um, I'm missing one thing. What am I missing right now? Yep. So I'm missing the actual grid. So I need to actually grid this label, right? I need to grid it because I created it, right? But I didn't grid it into the screen yet. I talked about grid on the last episode, so you want to make sure you check that out. Now, something very interesting that you're gonna need to keep in mind here. Um, so I want to place. Let me just actually real quick comment that out. I want to place. So take a look at this. So toggles right now is a row 0, column 0, correct? So toggles, right? This is a row 0, column 0, right? As you guys can see right here. The checkbox is what? Row 1. So it's right below it, but it's also a column 0. Okay. So something that you need to keep in mind is the following. Okay. When I create recoil toggle, I need to actually put recoil toggle before the checkbox, not after. Okay. You want to put it before. Now, you don't have to, but usually most people put the label before the checkbox in most applications. So for us to do that, we need to actually move recoil checkbox to the right. So that means that we need to move the column, instead of column 0, which is the first column over here, it's going to be this column. Okay. Let's do that right now. Let's put column 1. Okay. Let's re-execute the application. And now, as you guys can see, there you go. It's on column 1. Okay. Nice. Now let's actually uncomment our label, recoil label, and let's finish gridding it. So now we can do row 1, right? It's gonna be the same row as the checkbox, so row 1, but it's gonna be in a different column, column 0. It's gonna be sticky to the west. Okay. Let's execute it one more time, and there you go. So we have toggles over here on the top, we have recoil toggle, and we have a checkbox right next to it. And my mouse is moving down as soon as I check it. Let me see if I can. There you go. Okay, there you go. Nice. So now we have that. So now if somebody opens your application, they're gonna now finally understand. They're gonna know, okay, so if I turn this, it's supposed to turn on something about the recoil, right? Now they know that this is gonna turn on the recoil compensation, right? It's common sense. All right, cool. So all right. Now what we can do is the following. Let's see here. So let's actually begin working on this because right now there's a problem. So take a look at this. If I turn on the recoil toggle, it's gonna move my mouse down, and that's okay. That's planned, right? If you turn on the recoil toggle, it's gonna move your mouse down. Now we're gonna change that later on, but for now that's okay. So the problem is here, if I unselect it, it stops. The loop is still going, right? So nothing, we didn't break the loop. It's still going. So it's gonna check if recoil boot is on again. Let's check this checkbox. If we check the checkbox, then recoil boot turns on. Now it's on. If we uncheck it, it's off. Now we have another way of getting out of this loop. You guys know what it is, right? It's pressing this key over here, the Q. The problem with this is that look what the Q does. It breaks. When you break a loop, you get out of it completely. So this function ends. And that's a problem because we don't want this function to end. We want to be able to break. So we want to be able to turn off recoilable, but not actually get out of the loop, the function. There's two ways you can do this. There's the smart way and there's the hard way. I prefer the hard way. And I know that's weird, but I'm going to show you guys both ways. So the easy way, right, is to do what? Well, we know that your mouse is only gonna move if recoil bool is equals to true, correct? So if this is checked, so what we can do is we can easily come over here and we can change that. So recoil bool equals to false. Okay. So if we press Q, we are turning off recoil bool. So that's one easy. That's a smart way of doing it. Doesn't mean it's the right way of doing it. Right? It's just somebody that thinks they're smart, they're gonna do that. Right? So right now it's on. If I press Q, it turns off. But now look at the problem. I turned it off, but look what the problem is. It's still checked. Okay, the recoil, this thing is still checked, and that's a problem. Okay, so we need to fix that. So another way of doing this is actually to create another loop. Okay, and this is actually gonna help us out later on. So let's actually real quick just close the application. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna have this loop running. This loop is gonna be running all the time. And to prevent any risk of breaking out of this loop, we're actually gonna create another loop inside of this loop. So this loop is while true, right? Which means it's gonna run forever, right? The other loop that we're gonna create is only gonna run if recoil bool is on. Let's do that right now. While recoil bool true. Okay. Okay, so now that we have that, we can simply do the following. So now that we have while recoil bool is true, now we can put everything inside of this while true. Nice. Now, there is one problem here, and hopefully you can see the problem. Let's actually run this application one more time. So if I check this box right now, yep, that's what happens. So if I check that box right now, right? So let's actually real quick recap this. So when we run this loop, when we run this function, the first thing that happens is this. It's gonna begin a loop, This is an infinite loop that keeps on executing. So it's gonna execute every 0.1 seconds. So execute every 0.1 seconds, which is really fast. All right. So, and then if recoil bool turns on, if recoil bool is on, now actually loop only if recoil bool is on. So this is another loop, and this other loop will do what? It's gonna only execute if recoil bool is on, which is good. The problem is this loop doesn't have any timer, right? It doesn't have any sleep, and it's important to have a sleep so that you, first of all, you lower the you give the CPU a little bit of time to chill out, and not only that, but you also, if you don't have a sleep, it's gonna execute this very, very quickly, extremely quickly, to a point that it's gonna be based on your machine. Okay, so let's do sleep 0.1 here too. Actually, usually I do 0.01. Okay. Okay, but now here's the thing. Let's take care of a little logical problems here. So if recoil bool is on, right? While recoil bool is on, then here we're checking again if recoil bool is on. So we can take this out. Let's take this conditional out, right? Because this is only gonna execute if recoil bool is on, and if recoil bool is on, then we are moving our mouse. Now, you may not want that though. You may want to use that checkbox. So let's actually real quick comment this out. You may wanna just turn on this checkbox, but you don't want your mouse to move yet. You may want to move your mouse only when you press left click. This is just a way to toggle it, but it's only gonna trigger the compensation when you press left click. You get what I'm saying? So because right now, let me just refresh this to you guys real quick. Let me put a big timer so that it doesn't move my mouse all the way down. Because right now the problem is that as soon as we check this box, it's gonna move our mouse down. You may not want that. I personally don't want that. Okay, if you want that, just leave it how it is. But I'm gonna change that up. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use Win32 API. Now, I am not gonna use Win32 API to move the mouse. That's not a very good idea. I'm gonna use the Win32 API to detect if there was a button press. Okay. So we're gonna do if Win32 API get async key state 0x01, okay, is not equal to 0. So what this conditional actually does, guys, is that it's gonna basically use Win32 API, right, to keep on checking the state of your left button click. Okay, if your left button click is pressed, then it's gonna do something. And what is it gonna do? It's gonna move the mouse. Okay, so right now what we have is actually really nice. So right now, if recoilable is on, nothing's gonna happen. Something is only gonna happen if you're holding on to your left button click. So if you're shooting, let's do that right now. Let's test it out. Okay, and I'm gonna now press the mouse button. There you go. I pressed it, and it's moving my mouse down. And I'm gonna hold it. If I hold it, it also moves my mouse down. The reason why it's moving at a little bit of delay is because the timer over there, the sleep. Let's change that up. Let's actually have sleep 0.03. And then it's gonna be a little more smooth now. See? That's much smoother, right? Look at that. That's much smoother. Nice. Alright. So now what we're gonna do is actually I'm gonna load this a little bit more so that it's a little smoother. 0.01. That's I think that's fine, yeah. So right now it's moving again. It's kind of fast because okay, just press Q. All right. The reason why it's fast is because we have this value over here, and of course that's gonna change later on when we actually implement our database, which is gonna be local. It's gonna simply hold on to the values, the settings values, and the values of each guy and everything. Database, okay? It's gonna be a local database. You can have an online database too if you choose. I don't really recommend it unless you are gonna deploy this. Anyways, so let's move this to 1. All right, so now what we're gonna do, guys, is we're actually gonna move on to do the next thing, which is we wanna have another way of turning on the recoil. So right now, the only way of turning on the recoil is by doing what? Is by pressing this checkbox, right? That's the only way. And I actually don't like that. I want to have another way. I want to be able to press a key on my keyboard and turn on. So that's what we're gonna do right now. So to do this, we're gonna create a few variables. So we're gonna create one variable named toggle recoil key. Okay, or you can just call it recoil key, which is a little easier. And it's gonna be Y. So if you press Y, we want to do what? We want to make sure we are changing the recoilable. Okay, so to do that, it's very simple. So let me just think over here. So we're gonna create a function over here. That's basically gonna be a function that's constantly gonna be checking if the Y key was pressed. Okay, now you don't have to make this a function. Okay, you can simply come over here and you can simply do if keyboard.isPressed, and we created a variable which is recoil key, which is equal to Y. It's the same thing as Y. Okay, then what? Then recoilable equals to not recoilable. Okay, we can do that. You need to have that in there, and you need to have that in the recoilable too. So you can just do that instead. Okay, you can do that instead. There you go. Okay. Now I actually let me just actually press a key Y. I press Y and now it's off, right? But the button is still checked. So this button over here is still checked, and that's a problem. So now we're gonna fix this problem. One thing to keep in mind: this is not gonna be a very easy task, so you need to pay attention. Okay, so let's take this out. We don't need this anymore. Okay, we already have a way to get out of the loop. So what we're gonna do now is very easy. So what you wanna do is over here on this function recoilable check, you wanna actually set up. You already have this variable, this parameter var int equals to none, right? So what we're gonna do is very simple. Every single time that we press that key, you actually wanna call this function, because this function is responsible for what? This function every single time you check this button, right, on the frame, this function is responsible for turning on and off the recoilable, right? So when you check the check button, right? When you check button, so let me show you guys. When I check button, it calls this function, and then this function turns on and off the recoilable. So right now the recoilable is on. Okay. All right. I also want to make sure I use this same function over here, to perform the same action, but now instead of me having to check this check button, I want to be able to press a key. So when I press a key, a certain key, it's gonna change the recoilable. Okay, so how are we gonna do that? Well, we know that var int is only gonna be none, right, when it's gonna be called, when the function is called from outside. Because if the function is actually being called from inside, right, from the layout, right, then it's gonna have a value. Okay. So let me actually show you guys what I'm talking about, because I know some of you guys may be confused right now. You guys need to remember, what is var_int? Var_int is this, okay? And this is only part of the layout. This is not outside of the function. So everything over here, recoil loop, is outside. We need to have a way to actually communicate with the layout. And that's what we're doing right now. So real quick, let me just actually print var_int. So every single time we actually check the recoil box, we're gonna print var_int. So you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, pay attention right there. So right, as you guys can see, right, there's a little value, and then I'm gonna uncheck it. There's a little value again. Now you guys have no idea what the value is, right? Because I didn't actually use get. So let me actually real quick change that up to .get. Okay. And now it's 1, 0. So 0 is false. So right now it's not checked, so it's 0. If I check it, 1. So you guys can see it's printing it out, right? 0 and 1. And what happens if it's 1? If it's 1, the recoil bool is true. So that's what happens. If it's 0, which is else, the recoil bool is false. Okay. Hopefully you guys understand that. If you don't, I recommend you go back a little bit on this video, just like a minute ago, and try to understand what I'm saying. So what does that mean? That means that var_int, if executed from inside the layout, is always going to have a value, either 0 or 1, correct? Which means that if it's none, okay, if var_int equals to none, then it's being called from outside the layout. Which means that it's being called from this loop, which or from any other function outside this class, this frame. Which makes me assume that I'm trying to change the recoil bool. So then we can just do recoil bool equals to not recoil bool. Okay? And then we can actually return. So if var_int is equals to none, then we're gonna modify recoil bool to be the opposite of what it is. So if recoil bool is true, it's gonna be not true. What is not true? False. If recoil bool is false, it's gonna be not false. What is not false? True. Let me just real quick. True equals not false. False equals not true. If something's not true, it's false. If something's not false, it's true. I know that may be confusing, but it's just a truth table. All right. Let's actually get this going now. Let's see if this is working. So right now, nothing's gonna happen because we didn't actually call the function. So we did this change. We created this new conditional. And just take this out. But we are not actually calling this function. So what we need to do now is we need to actually, let's create a function because I don't want to have to retype this conditional every single time. See, I already typed it twice. When you type something more than 2 or 3 times, you want to create a function for it. So let's just copy that. And let's do check recoil bool. Okay. Boom. Just like that. And let's do global recoil bool. And now we can just use this function instead. Just like that. Much easier, and we're saving a few lines of code. And it's still very easy to read, right? We can see the function right there. It's very easy to read. So now let's try it out. Let's see if this is actually working. So now let's call the function. So we're gonna call recoil bool check. Now, one thing that you need to understand here is that you cannot just do recoil bool check. So if I try calling the function recoil bool check, it's not gonna work. The reason why it's not gonna work is because this function is part of what? It's part of the layout. So for us to actually access that function, we need to do what? We need to actually access the interface first. Then after going through the interface, we need to access his main body, which is his main body. Then we can call the function. So how do we do that? Here's the interface right here. Let me see. App. So we do app dot main body dot recoil bool check. Okay. And we don't need to pass anything here. And if we don't pass anything, it's gonna automatically place it as none. And if it's none, then it's gonna change recoil bool. Okay. Something else that we need to do is that because right now it's gonna work, but if we change recoil bool, we're not actually changing the checkbox. We need to also change the checkbox. If recoil bool is on, then we do self.recoil checkbox select. There you go. Else, I think it's deselect. Yeah. And then we return. We don't need to continue. We don't need to do anything else here. Okay. And you have to return, by the way, just to let you guys know, because if you don't, so let's, if varInt is none, that means that varInt does not have this method get. Okay, so you need to return if varInt is done. Let's see if this is actually working. I'm not sure. Let's see. So the key is Y. Is it Y the key? It is. Okay. Clearly not working. So let's actually understand what do we do wrong. What did we do wrong here? So let's actually print something right here. Let's print here just so we know. Okay, so it is executing. It is actually calling this function recoil bool, not recoil bool. It is doing that. Oh, I understand. We are changing recoil bool to not be recoil bool. So let's say if it was true. If it was true, now it's false, right? And then here we are changing again to back. Now it's back to whatever it was. So that's not very smart, is it? Oh boy. Okay, my bad. There you go, guys. So that's what you're supposed to have. I think that's actually. Yep, there you go. So if I press Y, it's doing it quite quick. Why is it? Let me see. I think it's because of how quick the function is. Oh, okay. Uh, I see. Let's do something. Let's do something real quick. Let's put a sleep right here. Let's put a sleep right here. Yeah, there you go. It's because okay. So the problem is because this loop is going on so quick, is happening so quick. As soon as you turn off, right, recoilable. As soon as you turn it off, it does everything here very quickly, and it kind of closes out the function over here. So basically, what happens is it's calling itself twice, very quickly. So it calls itself here if we're on, and then calls it here. That happens too quickly. So so the function doesn't really have the. You can't really see the change, basically. Okay. Anyways, all right. It's kind of hard to explain things as I'm coding, but yeah. So let's do 0.5. I think that's a little more responsive because 1 takes too long. Okay. Okay. Basically, what's happening is when we press the key, the recoil key, right? It's gonna make all this change and it's gonna sleep for a little bit to give time, for the layout to do what it needs to do. There you go. Okay. There you go. Sleep for a little bit. Boom. Okay, I'm pressing my left button click. There you go. Okay, actually, let's decrease the sleep so it's a little more responsive. Okay. And okay, very good. Perfect. So that's what we have this video. I think this video was long and I understand that we didn't do that much, but there's not a lot of things to do from now on. I mean, it's kind of now like based on you. Like you need to actually go out there and if you wanna, let's say you wanna do a few more labels, then you can very easily do labels. By the way, I do know that you don't have to actually set these labels to any variable. Okay, I understand that you can actually very easily just do this. You can very easily just create it and then grid it immediately afterwards. Okay, just like that. Okay, and there won't be any change. And I understand that completely. I like creating the variables just in case later on I want to change the variable. I can just put self in front, right? But you don't have to. You can just do that, and that's gonna, there's no difference, right? So you don't have to actually have those variables there. Because the only reason why we created a variable there is so we can have an object of this, so that we can change that later on, right? But we don't really need to change recoil toggle or toggles. At least not programmatic. At least not using code. We can change it manually, right? So I can come over here and change manually to just recoil, for example, which I think that actually looks a little better. Yeah. Alright guys, so that's what we have this video. I understand that it was a long video. Make sure that if you're lost somewhere, you can use the comment section. You can also join my Discord server and ask me for help at any time. Okay? You can just go there and ask me for help. The source code for this entire program is gonna be released as soon as we finish coding it. Okay, so when we finish coding, it's gonna be my Discord server. Okay? I also have a website. I have an application called Illusory, which basically does this. It's a recoil application. It's of course more powerful and more stealth than this application. But yeah, you can use Illusory. It's for free on my website. You can also get the paid version on my website too. Okay, I have a video on Illusory on my YouTube channel. All right, guys. So thank you for watching this video. Have a great time.